Title: Life Inside ADX Florence, the Prison That Breaks Men. The Ghost of Florence. Welcome to the shadows where justice has no light. If you survived this story, hit that subscribe button, because what you're about to hear might just keep you up tonight. The black SUVs carve through the Colorado desert, their tires spitting gravel in the cold dawn air. Inside one of them sat Marcus Delaney, former drug lord, rumored killer, and self-proclaimed king of the Chicago underground. His wrists were shackled tight, his eyes hollow. The convoy wasn't headed to just any prison. This was ADX Florence, the place they call the Alcatraz of the Rockies. Marcus had spent 2 decades mastering control of men, of streets, of fear itself. But as the razor-wire fences of Florence came into view, even he felt it slipping. The Supermax wasn't designed for rehabilitation. It was built to erase you, to lock away your body and break your mind. When the gates clanged shut, it wasn't just metal closing. It was the sound of a legend being buried alive. Inside, everything was steel, concrete, and silence. The cells were 7 by 12 feet, with a single slit for sunlight. Meals were slid through slots. Voices were rarely heard. Men here didn't serve time. They dissolved in it. Among Marcus's neighbors were names whispered in every FBI office in America. Ted Kaczynski, Richard Reed, Zacharias Moussaoui, ghosts of crimes that reshaped the world. Marcus tried to play it cool. First week in, he counted every brick, every second, every breath. But then came the food. He'd been warned. ADX food will teach you what hell tastes like, an old guard joked. But the moment the tray slid under his door, he understood what that meant. Mystery meat, gray, rubbery, flavorless. Cold beans that smelled of rust. Every bite tasted like punishment. Still, Marcus ate. He had to stay strong. He had plans. See, Marcus wasn't just another inmate. Before his arrest, he'd run an empire that stretched from Chicago to Miami, an operation so tight it made the DEA lose sleep. But the feds didn't catch him because he slipped. He was betrayed by someone inside, and that someone had disappeared. 3 weeks into his sentence, Marcus received a folded note under his meal tray. It read, "You're not the only one who got buried." No name, no handwriting he recognized, but the words sent a chill through his veins. He tore the paper to pieces, flushed it, and stared at the drain as if it might whisper back. Nights were worse. The silence inside ADX wasn't normal, it was alive. Sometimes he heard scraping from the walls, like nails on concrete. Sometimes whispers. "Delaney still think you're king?" He thought it was his mind breaking. Until one morning, his food tray came late, and when it arrived, the beans had been rearranged into the shape of a crown. That was the first message. Within days, Marcus began noticing small signs. A scratch on his metal sink shaped like an arrow. A smudge on his mirror that read "Look below." When he finally pried loose the metal vent beneath his bed, he found another note. "You were right about the leak." He couldn't breathe. The betrayal that sent him here wasn't forgotten. Someone on the outside, or maybe inside, was still playing the game. Marcus started piecing it together. The timing, the notes, the strange surveillance changes. Guards who lingered too long near his door. Meals that came later each day. Someone was watching. Someone who knew his past better than the system ever could. But ADX didn't allow communication. Every word had to pass through scanners, every message censored. Whoever was reaching him was breaking the rules, or working within them. Then came the letter that changed everything. It wasn't slipped under the door this time. It came officially, through the prison mail system. Stamped, logged, inspected. It was from a woman named Carla Mendez, claiming to be a journalist, writing a book about power and control inside America's toughest prisons. She wanted to feature Marcus as the centerpiece of her story. But when he saw her photo, his blood ran cold. He'd seen her before, standing beside his old right-hand man during a charity event in Chicago years ago. And his right-hand man was the one who'd turned him in. Marcus stared at the photo until the ink blurred under his fingers. ADX Florence wasn't breaking him. It was bringing the past straight to his door. He folded the letter, slid it under his pillow, and whispered to himself, "If this is a game, I'm playing too." But what Marcus didn't know was that Carla wasn't writing a book. She was already writing his ending. The writer behind the bars. Inside the concrete silence of ADX Florence, Marcus Delaney started counting days not by sunrise or sunset, but by the arrival of letters. Each envelope from Carla Mendez came neatly typed, no perfume, no emotion, just questions. What do you think power really is? Do you believe men can be reformed? Do you ever dream of revenge? At first, he didn't answer. He knew bait when he saw it. But on the sixth letter, when she wrote, "The man who betrayed you told me you'd never talk again," something inside him cracked open. He wrote back. His handwriting was slow, deliberate, like a man chiseling his story into stone. He didn't confess, but he explained. He told her how the streets raised him, how fear became currency, how loyalty was both weapon and curse. Every word was filtered through years of silence, soaked in bitterness and pride. And for the first time since his sentence began, Marcus felt something dangerous, alive. Weeks turned into months. The letters continued. Each one drew him deeper into memory, into confession, into obsession. Carla wanted to know everything about his childhood, his empire, his enemies. She knew details she shouldn't have, dates, names, even places the FBI never mentioned publicly. One afternoon, Marcus received a tray with no food, just a sealed plastic bag. Inside was a crumpled newspaper clipping. DEA informant found dead outside abandoned motel, execution style. Marcus's pulse thundered in his ears. The name in the article, Anthony Rourke. His right-hand man. The one who'd flipped on him. There was no return address, but he didn't need one. Carla was sending a message. That night, the air inside his cell felt heavy. Every sound, the hum of the ventilation, the echo of distant footsteps, became sharper, more dangerous. He couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the clipping in his head. Who was Carla Mendez, really? The next morning, he asked for the prison librarian, a rare privilege. He requested access to public records and author archives. He told the guard he wanted to educate himself. They laughed, but they approved. 3 days later, the name appeared. Carla Mendez, investigative journalist, contributor to True Justice Weekly. Her last published story? The Secret Code of ADX, How Inmates Communicate Without Words. Marcus leaned back in his steel chair, smirking. So that was it. She wasn't writing about him. She was using him. Maybe even testing him. He sent her a final letter, brief and sharp. You think you're studying me. But you forgot something. I built empires out of silence. You want a story? Come get it yourself. He didn't expect an answer. But a week later, during his daily walk in the enclosed concrete yard, a gray square with no sky, he saw her. Standing on the observation deck, flanked by 2 guards, wearing a visitor badge. Carla Mendez. Her face was colder than he remembered. She looked directly at him through the glass. And for a brief second, she smiled. When Marcus returned to his cell, a new tray awaited him. Inside the beans, written faintly with ketchup, were 2 words. It's not over. That night, a blackout swept through the facility. Rare, almost impossible in ADX. Emergency lights flickered red along the corridors. For the first time in years, the electric locks glitched. Doors groaned. Alarms wailed, then died. Marcus sat in the dark, heartbeat steady, instincts alive. Somewhere beyond the steel, he heard footsteps, measured, deliberate. Then a whisper, faint through the ventilation. Delaney, your story's bigger than you think. The next morning, order returned. Guards moved briskly, faces pale. No one spoke of the blackout. But something had changed. Marcus's routine shifted. His meals came at new times, his letters delayed. Carla's name was no longer on the visitor list. A week later, another letter arrived, not typed, but handwritten in slanted script. He wasn't the only informant, Marcus. You were never supposed to get life. Someone wanted you here. Below the message was a photo, grainy, black and white, from what looked like a security camera. In the background, inside a dim FBI conference room, sat a familiar silhouette. A man Marcus had trusted like a brother. Special Agent Daniel Cross. the lead investigator who finally brought down Marcus Delaney. Marcus stared at the image until his vision blurred. The betrayal didn't end with Anthony Rourke. It began with the law itself. That night, Marcus whispered into the darkness. "You think this prison breaks men? You've never met one who already broke himself." He pushed the letter into the vent, hiding it among the dust and rusted bolts. For the first time, he wasn't planning to survive Florence. He was planning to outlive it. Because now Marcus knew his revenge didn't need freedom. It only needed reach. And in ADX Florence, reach could mean anything. The man who outsmarted the cage. The cold mornings at ADX Florence were all the same. Steel doors, motion sensors, silence. But for Marcus "Ice" Delaney, something had changed. The guards still called him by number, not name, yet he walked with the poise of a man who'd found purpose in confinement. They thought he'd been broken. They had no idea he'd begun rebuilding. Behind those 4-inch thick walls, Marcus had quietly become the ghost of the system, invisible, unheard, but watching everything. The blackouts that once terrified him now became his tool. The ventilation hums that once lulled him to sleep turned into a coded network. Each knock, scrape, and pause in sound was communication, a language no one but the inmates understood. And from cell to cell, a legend began to form. They called him the architect. Every letter that came in was now rerouted through a labyrinth of hands, corrupt guards, inmates working laundry duty, even kitchen staff. Marcus had learned to control information without leaving his cell. The story Carla Mendez had tried to write, he was rewriting it from the inside. Then one morning, something unusual arrived. Not a letter, but a manila folder. Inside were photos, surveillance stills of a small Denver cafe, time-stamped 2 days earlier. In one frame sat Carla, facing someone whose face was turned just out of view. But Marcus didn't need to see him clearly. He recognized the suit, the haircut, the arrogance. Special Agent Daniel Cross. So she was still alive, and still playing both sides. Marcus felt the heat rise in his chest. Carla had fed him half-truths to provoke him, to dig deeper into his mind. But now she was sitting across from the man who'd framed him. And then came the kicker. A final photo, grainy but unmistakable. A USB drive being passed under the table. Marcus leaned back, a thin smile curling across his face. "So that's how it is," he murmured. "Everyone wants to control the story." But he still had one advantage they didn't: time. Over the next few weeks, Marcus began sending coded letters to old associates on the outside. Not to call in favors, those days were over, but to leak information. Names, deals, evidence. He started feeding truth into the same machine that once fed lies about him. The first story appeared online under an anonymous blog titled Echoes from the Supermax. It exposed Cross's connection to an undercover money laundering ring, the very one Marcus had taken the fall for. The blog post went viral within hours, sparking media speculation about FBI misconduct and secret informant deals gone wrong. By the third week, the Department of Justice opened a quiet internal review. Carla Mendez's byline disappeared from True Justice Weekly. And Agent Cross, the face of the Delaney takedown, was suddenly placed on leave. Inside ADX, Marcus sat in the dim light of his cell, reading the ripples of chaos through the whispers of guards. His revenge was moving without him ever touching a weapon. But justice, he realized, was never clean. One evening, as the sun's last blue light faded across the narrow window, a voice came through the vent, one he hadn't heard in months. "Carla, you won, Marcus," she said softly. "But you should know something. The story never belonged to you." He froze. "What do you mean?" Her voice trembled now. "The blog, your letters, none of it was leaked. The Bureau planted the USB. They wanted Cross gone. You were just the distraction." Marcus's stomach dropped. The same system that caged him had used him again, this time as a weapon against its own. And just like that, every illusion of victory turned to dust. The next day, a guard found Marcus sitting at his desk, staring at a single sheet of paper. On it was written only one sentence: "The cage doesn't break men, It teaches them how to become the cage. He looked up, smiling faintly as the door slid shut. Months later, a new warden took over ADX Florence. During a review of inmate files, he noticed something odd. Marcus Delaney's mail logs had increased tenfold, but none of the letters had identifiable senders. Each bore the same signature in faint blue ink, M. Ice. At first, they thought it was a prank. But then those same letters began appearing online again, this time under a new blog, Letters from a Cage. Each post was written in the same tone, calm, intelligent, hauntingly articulate. Every one exposed a different corruption, a buried case, a silenced truth. And somehow, despite all censorship, they kept reaching the outside world. No one could explain how. Inmates swore Marcus never left his cell. Guards swore they never saw him touch a computer. Yet week after week, his words echoed far beyond the walls of Florence. His story, the one everyone tried to bury, had become its own kind of freedom, viral, unstoppable, and dangerous. And on a cold morning in January, when the warden opened his inbox to another anonymous email titled Chapter 1 Begins, the sender line simply read, Marcus Delaney,